Imagine a vast expanse of water, a critical artery for the entire world. This is the South China Sea. It is located in Southeast Asia, bordered by several nations. China, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, all have coastlines along this vital sea. It is not just a body of water, it is a lifeline for international trade and a source of immense natural wealth. Think of it as a global highway for ships. Trillions of dollars in goods pass through these waters every single year. From the electronics in our homes to the clothes we wear, the sea is home to some of the world's most productive fishing grounds. For millions of people in the region, fishing is a way of life. This combination of strategic location, immense resources, and historical significance makes the South China Sea a place of great interest and, unfortunately, great tension. At the core of the dispute in the South China Sea is a concept known as the 9-dash line. This is a U-shaped line that appears on Chinese maps. It loops down from China's southern coast, encompassing almost the entire sea. China uses this line to claim historical rights over roughly 90% of these waters. Beijing argues that Chinese sailors and traders have been active in this sea for centuries. That history, they say, gives them special claim. But most of the world does not accept that. In 2016, an international tribunal at The Hague rejected the 9-dash line under UNCLOS. The tribunal said the line had no legal basis under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. China dismissed the verdict and continued to act as if its claims were valid. The claim is tied to national identity, taught in schools and promoted in state media. It makes the issue politically difficult to back down from. The 9-dash line directly clashes with the claims of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. UNCLOS grants 200 nautical mile EEZs. The line slices through them. It's a classic clash, historical claims versus modern international law. That disagreement is the engine driving escalating tensions. Multiple families believe they own the same valuable piece of sea, each with an old map to prove it. China is not just making claims on paper, it is actively working to enforce them on the water. Beijing has increased its military and Coast Guard presence. This is not a subtle move. China has deployed warships, Coast Guard cutters, and a maritime militia of fishing boats working in coordinated formations. This militia operates in the gray zone, civilian but coordinated with military aims. They can swarm areas and intimidate other vessels. They intimidate and assert control without firing a shot. By denying access, China creates a new reality on the water. Two flashpoints have emerged, the Second Thomas Shoal and the Scarborough Shoal. The Second Thomas Shoal hosts a small contingent of Filipino Marines living on the beached BRP Sierra Madre. Chinese ships surround shoals and attempt to block resupply missions. China has built artificial islands equipped with runways, ports, radar, and missile emplacements. These unsinkable carriers let China project power deep into Southeast Asia. The simmering tensions at Second Thomas Shoal recently boiled over into a direct confrontation. A Philippine resupply vessel on a routine mission was delivering essential supplies to Marines on the BRP Sierra Madre. As the small Philippine boat approached, it was aggressively intercepted. A significantly larger Chinese Coast Guard ship moved in to block it. Observers reported dangerous maneuvers. The Chinese ship cut across the Philippine boat. Tensions escalated into a collision that damaged the Philippine supply boat. The collision endangered the crew and caused significant damage. Manila condemned the action and released video footage that appeared to show ramming. China gave a starkly different account, blaming the Philippines. Beijing said the Philippine vessel made an unsafe turn and bumped the Chinese ship. This he said, she said pattern complicates de-escalation. The collision symbolizes the risk of miscalculation and wider conflict. An event like this could trigger treaty obligations under the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. The world watched, a stark warning of volatility in the region. The Philippines has responded with growing alarm and a more assertive public stance. Citizens and leaders alike are concerned about sovereignty and livelihoods. Manila has shifted from quiet diplomacy to public condemnation. It files protests and releases photos and videos as a name-and-shame tactic. The armed forces of the Philippines report surges in Chinese activity. They document clusters of warships, Coast Guard cutters, and fishing militia. Filipino fishermen are chased away from traditional grounds like Scarborough Shoal. This reduces catches and hurts families who depend on fishing. After years of a quieter approach, Manila now believes that deference failed to protect its rights. So the Philippines is strengthening alliances, especially with the United States, and modernizing its forces. For coastal communities, this is about survival and pride. Public anger fuels political resolve to stand up to China. The fight for the West Philippine Sea has become an issue of national pride and economic survival. The United States has long been a major player in the South China Sea. Its support for the Philippines is a cornerstone of regional strategy. The two nations are bound by a mutual defense treaty signed in 1951. For years it was unclear whether the treaty covered South China Sea incidents. Washington has now made its position clearer. U.S. officials say an armed attack on Philippine armed forces or public vessels would invoke commitments. The U.S. Navy conducts freedom of navigation operations, FONOPs, to challenge excessive claims. To back up the pledge, the United States increased visibility in the region. The U.S. bolsters the Philippine military through training and equipment. It provides military aid and modern patrol boats. Joint exercises like Balikatan have grown in scale and complexity. Allies such as Australia and Japan join to show collective resolve. Under EDCA, the U.S. rotates troops, pre-positions equipment, and gains access to Philippine bases for faster crisis response. U.S. policy toward the South China Sea hardened noticeably during the Trump administration. The approach shifted from strategic ambiguity to explicit strategic competition. Rhetoric labeled China a revisionist power undermining the international order. In July 2020, Secretary Pompeo rejected nearly all of China's maritime claims. For the first time, the U.S. formally aligned with the Hague ruling. The U.S. increased the tempo and visibility of freedom of navigation operations. FONOPs were publicized more widely to deter Beijing. Sometimes multiple carrier strike groups operated simultaneously to demonstrate power. The posture reassured allies and signaled resolve to Beijing. The tougher line continued across administrations, reflecting broad consensus in Washington. The policy shift moved the U.S. from concerned observer to active participant, raising stakes, and the risk of direct confrontation between global powers. To understand the crisis, we need to look back at how events unfolded. Here's a condensed timeline. In 2009, China formally submitted the 9-dash map to the United Nations. That sparked formal protests and a new era of confrontation. 2012, Scarborough Shoal standoff and China's seizure of the shoal, a wake-up call for the Philippines and the region. Starting in 2013, China began large-scale island building in the Spratlys. It quickly militarized those islands with runways, ports, and defense systems. In 2013, the Philippines took the dispute to The Hague. July 2016, The Hague ruled against Beijing. China rejected the verdict and continued consolidation. Legal victory did not change facts on the water. 2020, the U.S. formally rejected China's claims, increasing direct involvement. Present, the 2025 collision at Second Thomas Shoal illustrates where we stand today. The conflict matters for three simple but profound reasons. Trade. This is one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Any conflict could disrupt supply chains, raise insurance costs, and push prices up worldwide. Second, resources. Oil, gas, and fish are vital for regional development and food security. Control over these would create a major power imbalance. Third, rules. This conflict pits historical claims against internationally agreed law. If a powerful state enforces claims through intimidation, it sets a dangerous precedent that undermines the rules-based order. Looking ahead, the situation could continue to escalate with more frequent and dangerous confrontations. One miscalculation could spiral into a larger armed clash. Alternatively, the international community can deter escalation and reinforce norms through collective action. De-escalation requires meaningful diplomacy and an agreed code of conduct for vessels. The world is watching. The outcome will shape trade, power, and the rule of law for decades to come.